Hey folks, and welcome back. My name is Daniel, and today we're going to be starting a new series of videos. I'm pretty excited about it actually. It should be a lot of fun. We're going to be digging into some of the classic monsters of D&D and exploring not just how to paint them, but where they come from, what their abilities are, and how to use them in your games. Now, all of these monsters have come from suggestions from you guys, as well as a few of my own favorites and classics thrown in, but we're going to be starting today with the Carrion crawler. Alright, now if you like this, please hit like and subscribe, go ahead and check out my other videos, and maybe even leave a comment with a monster of your own that you'd like to see this done with. Alright, let's get started. While maybe the world at large doesn't know what a Carrion crawler is, you would be hard-pressed to find a more OG monster for D&D. Now, they were first introduced in 1975 in the Greyhawk supplement, and they've appeared in every edition of D&D since, in one way or another. So these nasty, maggoty, rotten meat-scented monsters have been killing adventurers since before I was born. Like any monster that's been around that long, there have been changes in how they look, and in the case of the Carrion crawler, also in their power level. Their massive reach, paralytic toxin, and tendency to focus on just one enemy at a time still, to this day, makes them incredibly dangerous foes. 5th edition D&D has them rated at a challenge rating of 2, but they're definitely one of the more dangerous monsters in that category. Physically, they started off as basically giant tentacle-faced maggots. Later editions would see them gain chitinous plates, eye stalks, and turning green rather than pale, sickly yellow, but 5th edition has them back to a more larval, maggoty appearance, and personally, I like that better, so that's what I'm basing my paint job on. So what does a Carrion crawler actually do, and what can adventurers expect from them? Well, they're scavenger monsters primarily. They tend to live underground, in caves, sewers, burrows, or the Underdark, but they'll come up if motivated by food. They're highly attracted to the scent of decay and blood, and even to things like lantern lights in darkness, since they know that can lead them to a meal. What they aren't is cunning or intelligent, and despite what some people would say, they're not really ambush predators because they're not smart enough to set up an ambush or a trap. They do share some characteristics with them though. They can crawl on ceilings and walls, and with a 10-foot reach with their tentacle attacks, even comfortably attack from, say, the ceiling of a sewer tunnel or a cave wall. And once they do attack with their tentacles, anyone they hit has to make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw to avoid paralysis for up to a full minute. Now that may not sound like much, but keep two things in mind. One is that this is a Challenge 2 creature, so it's meant to be either fought by low-level parties or in combination with other monsters. But more importantly, they have to make that check with every attack. Succeeding once does not make you immune, and we all know that if you roll enough times, eventually you're going to roll badly. That's just how it goes. So eventually someone in your party is going to get paralyzed. And then what? Well, Carrion crawlers tend to go in for the kill. If they were smart creatures, they might try to paralyze the whole party and then kill one of them. But they're not, which means that as soon as a member of your party is paralyzed, the crawler's going all in on straight up murdering them. They need corpses both to feed on and to lay their eggs in, ew, so their priority in combat is making corpses. Which means that as a DM, you get to deliver an incredibly potent oh shit moment when a party member inevitably fails that saving throw. If that weren't enough, when a Carrion crawler successfully kills something, they release pheromones. Now this is thought to be their way of kind of marking their territory, trying to drive off other competing crawlers. Unfortunately, this sometimes has the opposite effect. It draws other crawlers in towards the place where they know that they can find a meal. So if the crawler does successfully kill a party member, or if your players are unlucky enough to stumble on a carrion crawler that has just killed something, they'll be dealing with these creatures in multiple, possibly even as a swarm. Now it's hard to overstate how deadly that could be, so make sure to reserve that for high-level parties, situations where you want the players to flee from combat, or tables that expect a very high mortality rate. So how would you use one of these nasty little critters as a DM? Well, from a mechanical perspective, there's nothing too complicated or crazy to deal with. The Constitution saving throws from their 10-foot tentacle attack is really their bread and butter. On top of that, though, I'd say that if you're running an encounter with a carrion crawler or multiple ones, make sure to include some terrain pieces that have height, so that the crawler can make use of its climbing abilities. And while a single crawler might not be the most brutal monster to fight on its own, if more are attracted by the pheromones, or if you're having the party stumble on a monster fight already in progress, it could get very deadly very quickly. So how do you actually get your party into a fight with these things? Well, it's easier than you'd think. For one, anytime the party ventures underground, whether that's a simple city sewer or straight into the Underdark, they've got a chance of ending up prey to a carrion crawler. They're attracted to blood, which most adventurers are often spattered with, and also to light, so carrying a lantern or lighting a fire at night to cook on is enough to get one of these nasty bugs in your face. Alternatively, even stumbling on a recently finished fight in the wild, or if your players end up on the remains of a battlefield between two armies, it's likely to be thick with carrion crawlers. But while I was researching this, a few other ideas popped into mind about how these creatures could be used in more interesting ways, so I'll go ahead and share those with you too. Maybe a local investigator or a clever city guard has noticed some of the local people going missing over the last few months. On top of that, carrion crawlers have been spotted by sewer pipes. Now the guard knows that means there must be a fresh source of bodies for them that wasn't there before, and so he employs the players to go into the sewers and investigate. What they find after battling off some nasty carrion crawlers is actually the body dumping ground of a serial killer who's using the beasts to dispose of evidence. Now this could spiral off into a city-spanning murder mystery that could last multiple sessions, or even as a subplot throughout a small campaign. Maybe the players even have to purposefully try to hunt down a particular carrion crawler that's eaten a vital piece of evidence and, recover it before time runs out. Another great way to use them might be as part of an undead campaign. Now they're attracted to the scent of blood, after all, and what are zombies if not a bloody, decaying mess? So what is the relationship between carrion crawlers and the undead? Well, I didn't see it covered anywhere, but I can only imagine they'd see these fresher types of undead as a very tempting meal. Or maybe they find them particularly infuriating. I mean, I know I'd be upset if I had to fist fight my dinner before I could eat it. So while they may not be the stars of the show in an undead-focused campaign, a three-way fight between zombies, carrion crawlers, and the party could be a nasty surprise to add in, especially if the party is mentally and physically prepared for the undead and ends up with a giant helping of foul-smelling carnivore insects instead. And finally, my mind turned to a more devious use. I like intelligent enemies in my campaigns, especially for the main antagonists. Cunning, brutal enemies who are aware of the world they live in and can think of how to use it for their advantage. So while carrion crawlers themselves might not be very clever, that doesn't mean they can't be a tool for someone that is. So maybe the next time your party is pursuing an enemy through a cave system or sewers, the enemy can set a trap, Maybe if he's particularly evil, he even kills one of his own minions or henchmen and leaves their bloodied corpse as bait to purposefully attract carrion crawlers and give the party a significant roadblock. Then after they clear out the monsters, they find, to their horror, that the villain heartlessly killed one of his own people to set up this ambush and give himself time to escape. That speaks to the drive and immorality of the villain they're facing and what he's willing to do to get his way. Or maybe if it's something like a cult, or the enemies have that sort of fanatical fervor, one of them willingly sacrifices themselves to attract the crawlers and slow down the party so that the rest can accomplish their goal. Pretty creepy stuff. Now, as you can see, even if a monster is not particularly intelligent, there are always ways to use it and to exploit its unique characteristics to help tell your story. And with that said, here's my finished carrion crawler. And that is it. We've added a really nasty looking carrion crawler to our army of D&D enemies. I had a lot of fun digging into the history of this monster. It goes back even further than I thought it did. And finding out, what the different versions of it did, coming up with story hooks was a great time. I have a lot more enemies on the list, a lot more monsters to dig into, so if you've enjoyed this, please hit like and subscribe. There are links below if you want to support the channel and help fund what we do here. I'd really appreciate it. And beyond that, if you've got maybe a favorite encounter with a carrion crawler in your past that you want to share, I'd love to read about it. Or if there's a monster that you love that you'd like to see this done with, drop it below. It's definitely going to get added to the list if you do, and I'm going to try to get to everything on the list. Possible though it may seem. Alright, thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next one.